Hello, Internet, and welcome to my desk, again. Because this time, just like last time, we're going to talk about the video games that I purchased in the last 2 months. This time we're going to cover March through April. There's not a ton of games to talk about, frankly, but I've got some cool stuff here that I'm pretty happy that I picked up over the past 2 months. I think it's like a total of 5 or 6. We're going to look through here. But first of all, we're going to start off with the heavy hitter that I am really most excited for, Hybrid Heaven for the Nintendo 64. I got a complete in-box copy of Hybrid Heaven for the Nintendo 64. It's got a little bit of box crush in a couple locations, a little bit of shelf wear, but for the most part, it's in really good condition, and I'm really excited that I got this. This is one of the fairly rare Konami games on the Nintendo 64. Konami, by this point, didn't really seem to be invested in a whole lot of the Nintendo ecosystem, but they did put this game out, and I've played maybe the first 20 minutes of this so far, just to kind of test it out, make sure it works, all the good stuff there. And it feels like PlayStation-era Konami. It's got a very Kojima feel to it. I looked through the manual in search of any information I could find on if he was involved at all with this game, and I couldn't find his name even once. That being said, it's got some of the things that I, as someone who doesn't play Metal Gear Solid or hasn't played Metal Gear Solid, some things that I do like heavily associate with Kojima. One of the first things that you do in the game is you find a ladder and climb down it. And if you have touched Metal Gear Solid or you've been on the internet long enough to hear people talk about it, yeah, ladders and Konami games. Either way, I got the whole manual here. I've got the box, and of course I've got the game here as well. Of course. It's all in pretty darn good condition. There's a little bit of, a little bit of wear on the back of the cartridge, but not too bad. It's an interesting game for the N64, third-person shooter / action-adventure. I guess there's some turn-based combat in here once you get into it. I haven't gotten that far yet, but I hope to before too long, honestly, because this is like a really interesting game. It also starts off with a super long cutscene, another thing that, again, in my mind is heavily associated with Mr. Kojima. I believe it's like, I think it was somewhere between 8 and 13 minutes that I sat there watching this cutscene. So, yeah, it feels like Konami. Moving on. Next up is Eternal Sonata on the Xbox 360. I have a very severe soft spot for Xbox 360 era, or I guess Xbox 360 specific JRPGs. There were quite a few of them. At the time, Xbox was trying to make a huge push into Japan that never really seemed to come through for them. But at the same time, like, we had some pretty cool games that came out of that. This is a Bandai Namco game, and it feels kind of Tales-like. It looks like Tales of games of the time. This and Tales of Vesperia were both on the Xbox 360, as was Blue Dragon. And what's the other one that everyone always talks about? And of course, a lot of folks are big fans of Lost Odyssey, which apparently I paid $9 for at one point. Also, one of the heavy hitter Xbox 360 JRPGs. It's a complete copy. The instruction booklet is fully color, which is always nice. Glossy paper, beautiful. It's a pretty thick manual. Back in the era of us getting cool manuals for games, which I always really appreciated. It's a 30 to 40 hour game, according to the internet. So, sizable, but for a JRPG, not entirely either unsurprising or actually that long, really. A lot of JRPGs, as we know, hundreds of hours of content are available for them. I played again about 20 minutes of it. We've got the girl character, who appears to be the main character of the game, and she also appears to be very sad, as the first thing that she does in the game is throw herself off a cliff, and then we sort of, like, backtrack into the actual game. So, it had an interesting premise, where it was like the dying dream of Chopin as he died in the, 1800s or whatever. A very strange and interesting concept for a game, I guess, but hey, it's one of those things that it sort of differentiated itself, not necessarily with its style at the time, but definitely with its concept, if nothing else. The combat system was really neat too. I kind of like it. I would like to play more of this game. I don't know that I ever will, honestly. I just kind of like having JRPGs for the Xbox 360. Magna Carta 2 was a recent pickup, and I was very excited to get that as well, you know. So, it's one of those things where, like, I don't know, when I see them, I grab them because I just want them. And it was like $15, so, like, come on. A wonderful game for the Nintendo 3DS, Fire Emblem Fates Conquest. This was a part of a two-part series of games that came out on the 3DS. The other, of course, being Fire Emblem Fates Birthright, as seen right here. There's also a third story for if you beat both of these games that finishes out the whole thing. I can't remember what it's called. Maybe I'll throw the text up on the screen. Whatever. The point being, though, that these are two halves of the same story, or they're alternative versions of the same story, I guess. I've so far gotten to, like, Chapter 8 in this, which I've had for years, and that's probably, you know, unfortunately, unless I really make it a priority, I'm not going to get a whole lot further in the game, obviously. But I did want to get the other half of it. I did purchase the DLC legitimately on the eShop before it closed, so I do have the entire set on my 2DS. So, this was the missing piece. I finally found a used copy in the wild, and so I managed to pick it up, which I was very excited for. There's not a whole lot to say about it aside from the fact that, hey, it's a Fire Emblem game. So now I've got almost all of the Fire Emblem games on 3DS. I've also got Awakening on my shelf over there, and the only thing I'm missing, I think, is called Shadows of Valentia. I think it's a remake of one of the older games. So I'll be looking out for that next. The other thing that I purchased is sort of a half Fire Emblem game. I got Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE for the wonderful console, the Wii U. This game is really interesting. Again, I've played about 20 minutes of all of these games, and this one was one of the ones that, like, right off the start, it had that Persona SMT feel to it, because half of the game is Shin Megami Tensei. It is a mix of Shin Megami Tensei and Fire Emblem. They sort of mashed them together and brought them into modern-day Tokyo for this game. It's an interesting concept. I can't say, like, where this idea would have even come from, but I also thought that, like, some of the gimmicks in it, even off the bat, were really interesting. The gamepad is where you get, like, text messages and interact with other characters that way, which I thought was really neat and novel. There is a remake of this on the Nintendo Switch, but I think they stopped producing cartridges because the physical copies are actually pretty expensive for the US release of it. I think they're up to like $75 right now. So, picking it up on Wii U for like $15 was something that, like, I saw it on the shelf and I was like, oh, that's one of those games that I always sort of had like a bit of a passing interest or a passing fancy with, but I never thought I'd actually pick up. But for the price that I managed to get it at, you know what? Why not? Like I said, I played the first little bit of it, and it's really interesting even from the word go. It does have a super engaging opening, so I'm really curious about where the story actually does end up going. It is, like, according to How Long to Beat, it's between 49 and 63 hours long, though, so I don't know that I'm ever gonna finish this one, but the fact that Fire Emblem characters in this game are basically stands from JoJo, yeah, it's really interesting, if nothing else. It's such a huge mashup, you know what I mean? Here's an interesting one. Sarge's Heroes 2 for the Game Boy Color Complete. I bought this on eBay, actually, of all things. Not usually a fan of buying things on eBay, but when you're looking for something very specific like this, it's sometimes what you have to turn to. So this is, like I said, the complete copy. I've got the manual, I've got the box, I've got the game. And the funny thing about this one is that I already had a cartridge of it. This cartridge, though, does not work. I don't know why. I've actually taken it apart, cleaned it several times. It has a little bit of, you know, wear. It's been bumped around a little bit. And I don't know what's wrong with it, but it won't play, which makes me sad. I did notice there was, like, a little spot that might be missing a capacitor inside, and I don't know how that would have, like, gotten knocked off of it. I don't know. Either way, though, I wanted to have a complete copy of this anyways, and maybe for a video in the future. Yeah, that's the idea. Eventually, I'll make a video about this game as well. I wanted the complete in-box copy specifically for that reason. So the fact that my already existing copy doesn't work just sort of pushed me towards doing this. I'm still going to see if I can get this fixed at some point. I will try and fix it myself, but I'm going to have to figure out if there is a missing capacitor or what's going on in there. We'll have to see. Either way, though, most of the missions that I've played in this game you can beat in under a minute. It has some weird music that's like starts off really cool and interesting and good and then hurts my ears really badly. But yeah, it's a Game Boy game. And finally, the last game that I bought, and the one that I haven't recorded any footage of, is Jet Li Rise to Honor for the PlayStation 2. And I want to point out that this came from a Family Dollar, and it was reduced from $5 to $2. This was a $2 copy of a sealed PlayStation 2 game. It was pre-owned. That makes sense. So what we actually have here is a pre-owned, resealed copy of the game. So I don't mind opening it back up at this point. So maybe I'll do that and get some gameplay footage. Either way, I know nothing about this game, but it was $2, and I was like, I don't think I'm actually going to buy that, so one of my friends did and gave it to me. Which was pretty funny, frankly. So yes, I have no idea much about this game, but it's Jet Li Rise to Honor for PlayStation 2. So there you go. That is all the games I've picked up in the past 2 months, and yeah, I like buying video games. I still enjoy collecting. It's one of those things where I've got a lot of hobbies, and right now hasn't been a really great time for me to be buying new games, but I do enjoy every chance that I get to buy one. Also, my friend lent me this, because this game is really expensive now, apparently. Thanks, Nintendo. You did great. So, I've beaten Mario 64 many times. I've beaten Mario Galaxy before. I've actually never beaten Mario Sunshine. And I guess I have to now. Let's go.